The mystery of the Templars. In the pages of history there exists a brotherhood, cloaked in both glory and secrecy. Their name echoes through legend and rumor. The Knights Templar, a military order born in the fires of the Crusades, a force sworn to defend pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, yet destined to become one of the most powerful and mysterious organizations the world has ever known. They began as a handful of poor knights, but within a century they were rich beyond imagination, feared by kings, revered by commoners, trusted by popes, and whispered about in fear and awe. The Templars became legend even while they still lived. To understand the mystery of the Templars, we must return to the year 1119, to the city of Jerusalem, newly captured by Crusaders, a city soaked in blood, reclaimed by Latin knights from Muslim rulers, a city sacred to Jew, Christian, and Muslim alike. And in this moment of fragile triumph, 9 knights approached the king of Jerusalem, Baldwin II, and declared their desire to dedicate their lives to God, to guard the pilgrims traveling the dangerous roads to the holy city, roads filled with thieves, bandits, and enemies. These 9 knights swore vows of poverty, chastity, obedience. They bound themselves together in brotherhood, and they were granted residence in a wing of the royal palace built upon the ancient Temple of Solomon. It was from this that their name was born. Pauperis Commilitones Christi Templici Salomonici, the poor fellow, soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, the Knights of the Temple, the Templars. Their beginning was humble. They had little wealth, their clothes patched and worn, their mission simple, to protect travelers. Yet within decades they transformed into something far greater. Their reputation grew. Pilgrims spread stories of their bravery. The church blessed their work, and in 1129 the Council of Tours officially recognized them as religious order, endorsed by Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most powerful voices of the church, who praised them as Knights of Christ, warriors of both spirit and sword. And from this blessing flowed power, influence, and wealth. Donations poured in, lands given, estates entrusted, noble families eager to support the holy warriors, kings and lords granted privileges, and soon the Templars owned vast properties across Europe. Farms, castles, churches, entire networks of land. From Spain to England, from France to Hungary, they became landowners, bankers, administrators, yet still bound by vows of poverty. The paradox of their order grew. Individuals poor but the order rich, knights austere but organization powerful, and this paradox fed the aura of mystery surrounding them. The Templars also became innovators of finance. They created systems by which pilgrims could deposit wealth in Europe and withdraw funds in Jerusalem, safe from bandits. They became bankers to kings, treasurers of lords, custodians of wealth. Their financial network rivaled any of the age, and their secrecy only deepened suspicion. For what knowledge did they gain? What secrets did they keep? What truths did they guard? Their role as both warrior and banker made them both indispensable and dangerous, both respected and feared. Legends grew of what they discovered beneath the Temple Mount, for their headquarters was built on the ruins of Solomon's Temple, and whispers spread that they excavated tunnels, that they uncovered scrolls, relics, perhaps even the Ark of the Ursui, covenant itself. Some said they found knowledge forbidden, texts long hidden, prophecies sealed away, secrets that could challenge the church itself. Though no proof survives, the rumors were persistent, and they feed the mystery of the order to this day. For why else would their name echo with such power? The Templars were unlike any other order. Their seal depicted 2 knights riding a single horse, a symbol of poverty, but also of unity, brotherhood beyond wealth. Yet to their enemies, it symbolized secrecy, duality, hidden meanings, and indeed their order developed layers. Outer vows known to all, but inner mysteries whispered among few. Accusations arose that they engaged in strange rites, that they denied Christ, that they kissed one another in secret initiations, that they worshipped idols, that they held hidden teachings, though much of this may have been slander spread by their enemies. Still, the shadow of secrecy clings to them, suggesting truths never spoken aloud. As they grew, so too did their enemies. Kings who borrowed heavily from them came to resent their power. Nobles who envied their wealth whispered against them. Bishops who feared their independence sought to bind them, yet for 2 centuries they endured, their strength unmatched, their order unbroken, until the beginning of their downfall appeared in the envy of one king, Philip IV of France, who owed them vast sums and sought to erase his debt by destroying them. But this belongs to later parts of the story. For now, we must linger on the aura of mystery that surrounds them. The forbidden history of the Templars begins not with their end, but with their origin. For from the start they were tied to prophecy, to secrets buried beneath stone, to knowledge guarded in silence, to mysteries that the Church itself feared. For if it is true that they uncovered ancient texts, perhaps prophecies of the end of days, then their rise was not merely political or financial. It was spiritual, cosmic, dangerous, and the Church knew it. And perhaps this is why they were both blessed and feared, sanctioned and surveilled, supported and eventually destroyed. Their role in crusades further deepened their legend. Their knights fought with discipline unmatched. They rode into battle with ferocity, fearless. For they believed death in service of Christ brought salvation. Their courage inspired allies and terrified enemies. Yet their very success made them indispensable to kings and popes. And thus, their autonomy grew, until they answered to no one but the Pope himself, and this independence fed both their greatness and their doom. For kings who feared them, popes who envied them, and people who whispered about them, all saw in them not merely an order of knights, but a mystery, a brotherhood of secrets. The aura of secrecy gave rise to stories, that they preserved knowledge older than the Church, that they carried forward forbidden truths, that their very name linked them to prophecy, to the Temple of Solomon, to visions of apocalypse, to the end of days. And though official history dismisses this as myth, the persistence of the stories suggests that something was hidden, something discovered, something dangerous, something forbidden, and the Church in time would ensure that whatever it was would never be spoken again. Thus the Knights Templar stand at the threshold of history and legend, their beginning humble, their rise astonishing, their aura mysterious, their secrecy haunting. And from their origin flows the story of forbidden prophecy, a prophecy banned by Church, a prophecy of the end of days, a prophecy they may have guarded until their destruction, and which still whispers through history, waiting to be unveiled, hidden knowledge in the Holy Land. The heart of the mystery of the Knights Templar lies not only in their rise to wealth and power, but in the question of what they found in Jerusalem, for their headquarters stood upon the ruins of the Temple of Solomon, the most sacred site of ancient Israel, a place layered with history, legend, and prophecy, a site long destroyed yet still holy. And in this place the Templars lived for nearly a decade, excavating, digging, tunneling beneath the stones, and from this labor grew whispers of discovery, rumors of relics, scrolls, forbidden knowledge, secrets that shook the very foundations of faith. The Temple of Solomon had been destroyed centuries earlier, rebuilt as the Second Temple, destroyed again by Rome in 70 of the Common Era, its stones cast down, its treasures lost, yet in memory it remained the dwelling of God, the house of Ark of the Covenant, the site where heaven touched earth. And legends persisted that beneath its ruins treasures remained hidden chambers, sealed vaults, scrolls of ancient prophecy, relics of unimaginable power, the Ark itself perhaps waiting in silence, guarded by time and dust. And it was here that the Templars made their home, here that they began their search. Contemporary chronicles say little, They speak of knights living in poverty, protecting pilgrims, yet archaeological hints and later stories suggest they tunneled beneath the mount, their presence lasting years, their work largely hidden, and from this silence legends grew, that they uncovered scrolls from the time of Solomon, that they found texts from Essenes, that they discovered maps of sacred geometry, that they unearthed the Ark itself, or fragments of it, and with it the forbidden prophecies contained within, prophecies that spoke of the end of days, of judgment, of kingdoms falling, of truth unveiled. Some modern scholars have suggested that the Templars discovered documents that connected Jesus to earlier Jewish sects, perhaps texts like those found centuries later in Qumran, scrolls filled with apocalyptic visions, rules of communities, prophecies of Messiah, texts that would shake the very foundations of church doctrine if revealed. For they would show that the apocalypse preached in Revelation was not unique, but part of a larger Jewish tradition, and perhaps the Templars realized that prophecy had been altered, forbidden, censored by the church, and they chose to guard the truth rather than expose it. Others believed they discovered genealogical records, proof of bloodline, evidence of descendants of David, perhaps even of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, a secret so dangerous it could destroy the authority of Rome. For if the true heirs of Christ lived, then the Pope's authority would be questioned, the Church's foundations shaken, the empire's structure threatened, and so the Templars kept it secret, guarding it in silence, waiting for the day when prophecy demanded its unveiling. Legends speak of relics too, of chalices, of Holy Grail, of the head of John the Baptist, of mysterious idols, of Baphomet, a name whispered by inquisitors centuries later, perhaps symbol of wisdom, perhaps relic of ancient cult, perhaps misinterpretation of forbidden knowledge. Whatever it was, the Church feared it. For relics hold power, not only spiritual, but political. And if the Templars held relics tied to prophecy, relics that revealed hidden truths, then their order was not merely military or financial. It was apocalyptic, guardians of an end yet to come. The secrecy of the Templars feeds the legend. They said little of their excavations. No official records remain, only fragments of rumor, and yet their sudden rise in influence suggests they found something. For within a few decades of their founding, they transformed from poor knights to one of the most powerful orders in Christendom, not merely by donations, but by influence, by authority, by a knowledge perhaps that gave them leverage, secrets that kings and popes could not ignore, knowledge forbidden yet undeniable. The Temple Mount itself is symbolic. It is the place of sacrifice of Isaac, the place of Ark, the place of Shekinah glory, the place where prophecy dwelt, and to live upon it was to be at the heart of mystery. To dig beneath it was to trespass into forbidden realms, and the Templars did so with intent, with purpose, with silence. And from this act, their legend was born. They became not only knights, but guardians of secrets, not only warriors, but keepers of prophecy. And in time, this role would doom them. The forbidden knowledge they uncovered was dangerous, not only because of what it revealed, but because of when it would be unveiled. For prophecy speaks in time. It waits for the appointed hour, and the Templars may have believed they were entrusted with secrets meant for the last days. Visions of wars, of corruption of church, of false kings, of collapse of kingdoms, of unveiling of hidden truths, and if they carried such prophecy, then their role was cosmic, their mission apocalyptic, their silence deliberate. For to reveal too soon would bring destruction. To wait was to fulfill destiny. The Church, however, feared alternative prophecies. It feared texts outside canon. It feared visions not sanctioned. It feared knowledge not controlled. And thus, when rumors spread that the Templars held such secrets, the seeds of their destruction were planted. For no institution can tolerate rivals in prophecy. No pope can allow a brotherhood that holds forbidden knowledge of the end of days. No king can endure a secret order that claims destiny beyond crown and empire. and so their fate was sealed the moment they uncovered what lay hidden beneath the stones of Solomon. The forbidden truth of this part is clear. The Templars did not merely guard pilgrims. They excavated holy ground. They searched beneath temple. They uncovered relics, scrolls, prophecies, and they became more than knights. They became guardians of forbidden history, keepers of secrets too dangerous for church, too powerful for kings, too holy for empire. And for this reason, their order was doomed, for prophecy cannot be chained, and those who guard it are always hunted. Thus the legend of hidden knowledge in the Holy Land endures, whispered in chronicles, encoded in architecture, preserved in symbols, waiting in silence, reminding us that the Knights Templar were more than warriors. They were seekers, discoverers, guardians of truths forbidden, guardians of a prophecy that spoke of the end of days, the secret teachings of the Order. When we look at the history of the Templars, we see two faces: the outward face of Knights of Christ, sworn to poverty and discipline, guardians of pilgrims and warriors of the crusade, and the inward face of mystery, whispered by enemies, feared by kings, condemned by the church, the inner teachings of the Order, secret rituals, forbidden symbols, knowledge hidden from the world, knowledge that perhaps tied them to ancient prophecies of the end of days. For what else could inspire such awe and fear? What else could provoke the fury of both Pope and King, if not the suspicion that the Templars guarded truths too dangerous to reveal? The accusations made against them at their trial in the early 14th century may have been twisted by torture, shaped by malice, invented by inquisitors, yet they hint at something beneath the surface: accusations of spitting upon the cross, of denying Christ, of kissing one another in strange places, of worshipping a mysterious head, of secret initiations, of rites hidden from outsiders. And though the Church declared these blasphemies, perhaps in their distorted form, they reflect fragments of hidden teachings, teachings that were not denial of faith, but reimagining of faith, teachings that drew from discoveries beneath the Temple Mount, teachings that preserved forbidden prophecy. Some said the Templars worshipped Baphomet, a strange word that appears in trial records. Some interpret it as corruption of Muhammad, a slur connecting them falsely to Islam. Others see in it a cryptic name, an idol, a symbol, a code. Some suggest it means baptism of wisdom, initiation into knowledge. And if so, then the Templars may have guarded a teaching that salvation came not through church, but through gnosis, through knowledge, through awakening, a teaching far closer to Gnostic Christianity than to orthodoxy, and this would indeed be forbidden, for it undermined the authority of Rome. Other accusations speak of the Templars possessing a mysterious head. Some said it was a relic, perhaps of John the Baptist. Others said it was an idol carved in stone or metal. Some claimed it spoke, gave oracles, offered wisdom, and if such an object existed, it may have been tied to prophecy. For John was the prophet of repentance, the voice crying in wilderness, the herald of Messiah, and to possess his head would symbolize possession of prophecy, of warning, of end of days. And perhaps the Templars believed themselves guardians not of Christendom as empire, but of the prophecy that foretold its fall. Their initiation rites, too, were accused of secrecy. Young men brought into dim chambers, told to renounce wealth, to embrace poverty, to swear loyalty unto death. Some accuse them of spitting upon the cross as symbol of rejection of false church, not rejection of Christ himself, but rejection of corrupted institution. And if so, then their hidden teaching may have been that Rome had betrayed the message of Jesus, that true knowledge was forbidden, that prophecy was suppressed, and that they, the Templars, were chosen to guard it until the end of days. The secrecy of the order was deliberate. They answered only to the Pope. They revealed little even to fellow Christians. They kept their finances hidden, their rituals cloaked, their symbols veiled, and in this secrecy they preserved a body of knowledge, fragments perhaps of ancient texts, teachings whispered from Jerusalem, visions encoded in symbols, knowledge forbidden because it revealed too much, knowledge that could not be spoken openly. For to reveal it would be to confront the church, to challenge empire, to ignite fire. And so it was kept for initiates only, guarded as treasure more precious than gold. Their symbols still haunt us, the two knights upon one horse, the red cross upon white mantle, the sealed orders, the cryptic architecture of their chapels, round like the Temple of Solomon, filled with strange carvings, hints of hidden teachings woven into stone, perhaps symbols of prophecy, reminders of what they guarded, warnings of what was to come, their architecture a scripture in stone, their rituals a liturgy of secrecy, their order a living prophecy awaiting its unveiling. The forbidden prophecy they guarded may have spoken of corruption of church, of fall of kingdoms, of false messiahs, of wars and plagues, of the rise of a power that would claim Christ yet betray him, of an end where truth would be unveiled and forbidden knowledge revealed. This prophecy, if real, would have been intolerable to the church, for it condemned the very institution that sought to control it. It declared its fall, and the Templars may have carried it in silence, preparing, waiting, guarding until the appointed time. Why else would their enemies accuse them with such fury? Why else would inquisitors invent such elaborate charges? Why else would the church unleash such terror upon them, if not because beneath rumor and slander there lay a core of truth, a secret teaching that was indeed dangerous, not to Christ but to Christendom, not to Jesus but to Rome, not to faith but to empire. The Templars may have carried forward forbidden prophecy, knowledge that the end of days would reveal, knowledge that the church feared, knowledge that kings despised, for it undermined all authority built upon lies. The story of their secret teachings remains clouded, for most records come from trials, twisted by torture. But even so, the persistence of the rumors suggests reality. The secrecy of the order suggests substance. The legends that followed suggest power, and we must consider that the Templars may have seen themselves not merely as knights, but as keepers of mystery, guardians of prophecy, protectors of forbidden truths, their teachings whispered in secret halls, their symbols carved in hidden places, their prophecy carried like flame in darkness, never extinguished, even when their order was destroyed. Thus the forbidden history of the Templars deepens. They were not only warriors and bankers, not only crusaders and landowners. They were initiates, mystics, guardians of prophecy, bearers of secret teachings that foretold the end of days. And it was this, more than wealth or power, that sealed their fate. For kings can tolerate rivals in finance, popes can tolerate rivals in politics, but no authority can tolerate rivals in prophecy. And the Templars became exactly that, a rival voice, a forbidden memory, a brotherhood of prophecy, and for this they were condemned. Betrayal and destruction and the rise of the Knights Templar seemed unstoppable, their wealth unmatched, their power unrivaled, their influence spread across Europe and the Holy Land. They were answerable only to the Pope, exempt from local kings and bishops. Their fortresses dotted the Mediterranean, their fleets sailed the seas, their treasuries lent gold to monarchs, their swords struck fear in enemies. Yet what rises too high casts too great a shadow, and the Templars cast a shadow over kings themselves, none more so than Philip X of France, known as Philip the Fair, who would become the architect of their destruction, a betrayal born of debt, envy, and fear. By the dawn of the 14th century, Philip's throne was heavy with burdens. His wars with England drained the treasury. His conflicts with papacy strained his rule. He was deep in debt to the Templars, who had financed his wars, safeguarded his treasures, and controlled a financial network he could neither replicate nor destroy. And in the pride of a king, such dependence was intolerable. He needed freedom from his creditors. He needed the gold of the Templars. He needed their downfall. And so he set in motion one of the most ruthless betrayals in history. Philip whispered accusations into ears of churchmen. He spread rumors of blasphemy, of heresy, of idolatry. He claimed the Templars denied Christ, spat upon the cross, worshipped idols, engaged in obscene rites. He painted them as not defenders of faith but enemies of God. And though much was fabrication, though confessions would be wrung by torture, the image of corruption was enough to justify action, for kings need only a pretext, and Philip found his pretext in these accusations. On Friday, the 13th of October, in the year 1307, the betrayal began. At dawn in France, the king's agents struck. Templars across the kingdom were arrested, seized in their commanderies, their properties confiscated, their leaders imprisoned. Jacques de Montmarlet, the Grand Master himself, taken in Paris, accused of heresy, charged with blasphemy, betrayed by the very king they had once served, betrayed by the crown they had once defended. The day became a mark of infamy, and even now, Friday the 13th carries whisper of dread, echo of that betrayal. The trials that followed were spectacles of cruelty. Inquisitors demanded confession. Torture applied until men screamed lies. Ropes twisted, bones broken, flesh burned. Men confessed to anything, denied. Christ spat upon cross, adored idols, renounced sacraments. And yet, when torture ceased, they recanted. They declared innocence. They proclaimed their faith. They cried they were loyal to Christ. But once confessions were extracted, the damage was done. The record written, the verdict sealed. The Templars were guilty in eyes of kings and church. The Pope himself, Clement V, was caught in the snare. Once inclined to protect the Templars, he bowed beneath pressure of Philip. For kings can bend popes when swords and gold are at stake, and Clement issued the bulls that dissolved the order, confiscated their lands, transferred much to the Hospitallers, but much remained in hands of Philip, and thus the betrayal was complete. The order was destroyed, its wealth plundered, its knights broken, its honor shattered, its memory blackened by slander. But destruction did not end with dissolution, for executions followed. Knights burned at stake, leaders humiliated. Jacques de Molay himself, after years of imprisonment, was led to scaffold on the island of the Seine in Paris. There he declared before crowd that the Templars were innocent, that their confessions were false, that their order was pure, and he called upon God to judge his enemies. Legend says he cursed Philip and Clement, that within a year both king and pope were dead, and so the curse of the Templars was born, a prophecy that their betrayal would be avenged, that their destruction would not end their power, that vengeance would come. The curse became legend, whispered across Europe, the belief that Jacques de Molay's dying words summoned judgment upon his enemies, that the betrayal of the Templars would bring ruin to those who destroyed them. And indeed, history seemed to fulfill it. Philip's line faltered, his heirs weak, his dynasty collapsing within generations, France torn by war, the papacy humiliated in Avignon, all seen as fruits of betrayal, all seen as fulfillment of prophecy, all feeding the myth that the Templars carried not only wealth, but fate itself. And yet beyond curse lay deeper suspicion that the Templars allowed themselves to fall because their mission was not ended, that many escaped the arrests, that fleets sailed from La Rochelle into unknown seas, that treasures vanished into shadows, that secret orders preserved their legacy, that their knowledge survived hidden in symbols, carried into Freemasonry, preserved in Rosicrucians, whispered in secret brotherhoods, that their prophecy endured though their order burned, and that their destruction was not end but transformation. The betrayal and destruction of the Templars is more than story of greed. It is story of fear, fear of forbidden prophecy, fear of knowledge uncovered, fear of a brotherhood that could rival both pope and king. For wealth alone cannot explain such fury. Wealth could be seized without slander, but to brand them heretics, to burn them alive, to erase their name, to outlaw their order. This reveals a deeper terror, a terror of what they guarded, of what they knew, of the prophecy they may have carried, a prophecy that foretold end of church, end of kings, unveiling of truth, and for this they were destroyed. The forbidden history of their downfall is thus not only betrayal by king, not only weakness of pope, not only greed for gold, but war against prophecy, war against forbidden truth, war against the end of days itself. For if the Templars truly carried knowledge of apocalypse, then their destruction was necessary to silence it, to bury it, to forbid it. And yet prophecy cannot be killed with fire, cannot be silenced with rope, cannot be erased with decree. It endures, it survives, it waits, and so the legend of the Templars endures too. Their betrayal remembered, their destruction mourned, their prophecy still whispered. Thus Part 4 reveals the great betrayal, the arrest, the trials, the executions, the curse, the destruction of the order, and yet also reveals that destruction was not end, for prophecy cannot die, and the Templars became in death what they could not be in life, legend, symbol, myth, guardians of forbidden prophecy, waiting for the unveiling of the end of days, the lost prophecy of the Templars. When the flames consumed Jacques de Molay on that March evening in Paris, the crowd heard his voice rise above the fire. Some said he called out to Christ, others said he cursed the Pope and the King. Still others whispered that he spoke of a prophecy, a warning, a vision of what was to come. And though the words were not written, though the record is shadowed, legends soon arose that the Templars had guarded a prophecy, a secret vision of the end of days, forbidden by church, feared by kings, buried with the order, yet living in whispers, the prophecy of the Templar. The prophecy is never found in a single text. It is scattered, pieced together from fragments, from rumors, from chronicles, from the accusations at their trials, from the legends of survivors, from the architecture of their chapels, from the symbols they left carved in stone. Mosaic of mystery, a vision never fully written but always remembered, always feared, and the church worked tirelessly to erase it, to forbid it, to silence it. Yet the whispers survived, for prophecy cannot be bound by decree. At the heart of the lost prophecy was the belief that the church itself would fall, that the institution claiming Christ would betray him, that the Pope enthroned in Rome would become the false shepherd, that corruption would spread through altar and throne, that gold would replace truth, that empire would replace spirit, that the church would become Babylon, the harlot of Revelation, and that its end would come in fire and ruin. This was the forbidden vision, for no institution could tolerate prophecy of its own destruction. The prophecy also spoke of kings, of rulers crowned in splendor, yet hollow in soul, kings who would wage endless wars, who would drain their people, who would sell themselves to greed, who would betray justice, and these kings would rise and fall, their dynasties broken, their crowns shattered, their nations left in ashes. For the prophecy declared that power built on lies cannot stand, that crowns forged in blood cannot endure, that the sword of heaven would strike against them in appointed time. But the prophecy was not only of destruction, it was of unveiling, of revelation, of truth long hidden brought into light. The Templars believed that what they uncovered in Jerusalem was not merely relic or treasure, but knowledge. Knowledge of cycles of history, knowledge of patterns of time, knowledge that foretold collapse and renewal. And in their prophecy, the end of days was not absolute destruction, but transformation, a tearing down of corruption, a burning away of falsehood, an unveiling of truth, and after fire, a new dawn. The prophecy contained symbols, beasts and stars, towers and rivers, numbers woven in mystery, perhaps echoing Revelation, perhaps echoing older Jewish apocalyptic visions, perhaps drawn from scrolls hidden beneath the Temple Mount, and though the Church dismissed it as heresy, the persistence of symbols in Templar architecture suggests that they encoded their vision in stone. Round churches echoing Temple of Solomon, carvings of two knights upon one horse symbolizing unity in time of division, strange heads and crosses etched in secret places, all fragments of a prophecy, forbidden yet preserved. Whispers said the prophecy foretold a great war, not only of armies, but of faith, a war in which the true disciples of Christ would be hidden, persecuted, hunted, while the false church reigned in power. And at the climax of this struggle, the false church would be revealed, its mask torn away, its lies exposed, and then the end would come swiftly, with kings falling, with altars crumbling, with empires collapsing, and the truth long buried would rise, the truth the Templars guarded, the truth that they carried even to the stake. Some legends say the prophecy named a time, not a date, but a cycle, that after 7 centuries the truth would return, that the curse of de Molay was not only against king and pope, but against the age itself, that the Templar fire lit in Paris would burn again centuries later, unveiling corruption, unveiling truth, and some even today believe that the time is now, that the prophecy is being fulfilled, that the end of days is unfolding, that the forbidden knowledge is returning, that the secrets once hidden are rising into light. The Church feared this prophecy because it was not vague, it was direct. It named corruption, it condemned authority, it promised judgment. It spoke not of pagans or outsiders, but of the Church itself, the Pope himself, the kings themselves. It turned prophecy inward. It declared that betrayal came not from enemy, but from within, that the greatest danger to Christ came from those who claimed his name, and such prophecy could not be allowed to live. It was forbidden, it was destroyed, it was erased, yet it survived in whispers, in symbols, in legends, in myths. The forbidden history shows us that prophecy cannot be silenced. The Templars may have been burned, their order destroyed, their name cursed, but the prophecy endured, carried in secret brotherhoods, passed in coded rituals, whispered in Masonic halls, preserved in Rosicrucian texts, hidden in alchemical symbols, embedded in architecture, always alive, always waiting, always reminding the world that corruption must fall, that truth will rise, that the end of days will come. Thus the lost prophecy of the Templars stands as the heart of their forbidden history, a prophecy that foretold fall of church, collapse of kings, unveiling of truth, a prophecy banned by Rome, feared by monarchs, carried in silence, whispered in darkness, and now in fragments revealed again, reminding us that the Knights Templar were more than warriors, more than bankers, more than victims. They were guardians of a forbidden vision, prophets of an end yet to come, voices silenced, yet still echoing across centuries, calling us to see, to hear, to prepare for the unveiling of the end of days. Survival in shadows. The flames of Paris in 1314 were meant to end the Templars forever. Jacques de Molay's death was meant to silence their order. The papal decrees were meant to erase their memory. The confiscations were meant to break their wealth. The executions were meant to terrify their brothers into submission. Yet history whispers that the destruction of the Templars was not the end, but a transformation. For orders can be broken, castles can be seized, knights can be burned, but knowledge cannot be destroyed so easily. Prophecy cannot be chained, secrets cannot be erased, and the legend of the Templars speaks of survival in shadows. On the day of their arrest in France, many knights escaped, warnings were whispered. Some fled to England, others to Scotland, others to Spain and Portugal. In these kingdoms, the grasp of Philip IV was weaker, the papal decrees slower to take hold. And so the Templars found refuge. Some were absorbed into other orders. In Portugal, they became the Order of Christ. In Spain, they merged with military orders like Calatrava and Montesa, In Scotland, they may have joined forces with local lords who resisted papal control, and in these transformations their line did not end. Their traditions lived on under new names. Their brotherhood survived. Though disguised, legends also tell of ships, fleets anchored at La Rochelle, the great port of the Templars, and when the arrests came, the fleets vanished, sailing into the Atlantic, carrying treasures, carrying knights, carrying scrolls, carrying relics. Some say they fled to Scotland, some say to the Canary Islands, some whisper they crossed the ocean itself long before Columbus, and found refuge in hidden lands, establishing secret communities, preserving their prophecy in places beyond reach of king and pope. And though history cannot prove it, the persistence of the legend suggests that something indeed escaped, that the fire did not consume all. The survival of the Templar. Spirit can also be traced in architecture, in symbols, in brotherhoods that arose centuries later, especially in the Freemasons, who in their rituals, symbols, and myths preserve echoes of Templar heritage. The square and compass, the temple imagery, the secrecy, the oaths, the initiation, all suggest continuity, a line of transmission from Templar chapels to Masonic lodges, from medieval knights to early modern fraternities. And though the connection is debated, too many parallels exist to dismiss. Too many legends link the two. Too many rituals whisper the same themes: survival, secrecy, prophecy. The Rosicrucians too claimed inheritance of hidden wisdom, a brotherhood of secrecy that appeared in 17th century, their manifestos declaring possession of knowledge forbidden by church, their symbols alchemical and mystical, their vision apocalyptic and transformative. And though they did not claim directly to descend from Templars, many saw the connection. For their language of secrecy, of hidden prophecy, of forbidden truths echoes the legacy of the knights burned in Paris. And in their teachings we see survival in another form, the persistence of forbidden prophecy in new garments. In Scotland, the survival of Templar knowledge is most vividly tied to the legend of Rosslyn Chapel, built in 15th century by the Sinclair family, its carvings filled with strange figures, angels and knights, vines and cubes. Mysterious patterns, some say, depict plants unknown in Europe before discovery of the New World, and many believe Rosslyn is a shrine to Templar secrets, a stone memory of their prophecy, a place where the forbidden truths were encoded, hidden in carvings, waiting for those with eyes to see, ears to hear, hearts to understand. And the chapel has become a symbol of continuity, of survival, of prophecy preserved in stone. The survival in shadows was not only institutional, but symbolic, for the Red Cross of the Templars did not vanish. It appeared again in Bagma, heraldry, in flags, in orders of knighthood. It re-emerged in Portugal's voyages of discovery, carried on sails into the Atlantic, into the Indian Ocean, into unknown seas, and in these voyages the spirit of the Templars traveled, their vision of world destiny carried forward, perhaps their prophecy guiding the expansion of Europe, perhaps their knowledge shaping the course of history itself. Though hidden, though forbidden, though suppressed, it lived on in the currents of empire and exploration. The forbidden prophecy itself survived in fragments, in coded rituals, in allegories, in myths told within lodges, in stories whispered in secret societies, in texts hidden from eyes of church. It declared that corruption would fall, that truth would rise, that the false church would be unmasked, that kings would crumble, that new dawn would come. And though the words were veiled, the meaning was clear to initiates. The prophecy was preserved, waiting for the appointed hour. And this is why the church feared survival, why it hunted heresy so fiercely, why it condemned secret societies. Because it knew the Templar prophecy was not dead, but hidden. The survival in shadows was necessary, for open declaration would mean death. But in silence, in secrecy, in ritual, in symbol, in stone, the prophecy lived. It passed from master to apprentice, from knight to brother, from lodge to lodge, from generation to generation, hidden from the world, yet always present, always waiting, like a seed, buried in winter, waiting for spring, waiting for time, waiting for the end of days. And when that day comes, the seed will rise, the prophecy will be unveiled, the forbidden truth revealed. Thus the story of the Templars does not end with fire in Paris. It continues in shadows, in hidden orders, in vanished fleets, in secret lodges, in strange chapels, in whispered myths, in forbidden prophecies carried across centuries. It is the story of survival, transformation, persistence, and it is the story of knowledge too dangerous to die, knowledge forbidden yet alive, knowledge that still waits for its unveiling at the appointed end, the forbidden bloodline. Among the many legends that cling to the Templars, none is more provocative, none more dangerous, none more forbidden than the idea of the bloodline. The belief that the knights were not only guardians of relics and prophecy, but also protectors of a lineage, a living thread of descent that stretched back to the time of Jesus himself, a lineage hidden from history, erased by the church, whispered in secret, preserved in shadows, the forbidden bloodline that would shape the destiny of Europe and tie directly into the prophecy of the end of days. The bloodline legend begins with Mary Magdalene, a woman portrayed in the Gospels as follower of Jesus, witness of his resurrection, later reduced by church to sinner, erased as leader, silenced as teacher. Yet in alternative traditions, she is more than follower. She is companion, partner, perhaps even wife, mother of his children, bearer of his lineage. And if this is true, then the story of Christianity is transformed, for the legacy of Jesus is not only words and parables, but blood and flesh, not only spirit, but family. And this family, if preserved, would challenge the entire authority of church, for the heirs of Christ would live among us. The Templars, according to legend, discovered proof of this bloodline during their time in the Holy Land, perhaps in scrolls hidden beneath the Temple Mount, perhaps in genealogies preserved by sects, perhaps in relics carried west by early disciples. And once they knew the truth, they became its guardians, sworn to protect not only relics of stone and parchment, but living descendants, heirs whose blood carried both royal and prophetic significance, heirs who threatened the authority of kings and popes alike, heirs who were destined, according to prophecy, to re-emerge in the end of days. The story links Mary Magdalene to Gaul, to southern France, where tradition says she fled after crucifixion, bringing with her child or children of Jesus, settling in Provence, giving rise to a lineage that mingled with noble families of the region, later known as the Merovingians, kings of early France, rulers whose long hair symbolized sacred power, whose blood was said to carry divine right, a right not conferred by pope, but inherited by birth. And if these kings were indeed heirs of Christ, then their overthrow in 8th century by Carolingians was not only political, but spiritual, a usurpation of sacred bloodline by power of sword and papacy. The Merovingian kings were remembered in chronicles as having mysterious powers, healing, prophecy, vision, their tombs filled with strange symbols, their lineage described as sacred. And though history dismisses much as myth, the persistence of legend suggests memory of something more, perhaps echoes of a truth too dangerous to declare, that they were indeed descendants of Jesus and Mary, and that their blood carried destiny, a destiny the Templars later swore to protect. The connection between Templars and bloodline appears in Grail legends, which flourished in same centuries. Stories of knights seeking a holy vessel, a cup of Christ, a chalice of Last Supper, yet beneath the symbol lies double meaning. For Grail may not be only a cup, but a womb, a vessel of life, the lineage of Christ carried in flesh, not in stone, and the knights who sought the Grail may have been allegories of Templars themselves, guardians of the bloodline, protectors of the secret, keepers of the forbidden truth that Jesus left heirs, and that these heirs lived among noble families of Europe. The prophecy tied to this bloodline declared that in the end of days, the heirs would re-emerge, their lineage revealed, their destiny fulfilled. That a descendant of Christ would rise to lead in time of collapse, to restore truth, to overturn corruption, to end the false church, to establish new order. And this was the forbidden vision that the Templars carried, a vision intolerable to Rome, for it meant that authority of Pope was false. The kings enthroned by church were usurpers. The true authority lay not in Vatican or crown, but in hidden bloodline, a bloodline destined to rise when the world reached its final crisis. The church worked tirelessly to erase this possibility, branding Mary Magdalene as prostitute, suppressing texts that gave her voice, condemning gospels that showed her as teacher, destroying legends that linked her to Gaul, silencing stories of her children. Yet the memory endured, preserved in folk traditions, in local cults, in legends of saints, in Grail romances, in whispers of secret societies, and above all in the Templars, who according to legend took upon themselves the sacred duty of guardianship, sworn to protect heirs, sworn to preserve documents, sworn to keep prophecy until its time. The forbidden bloodline became more than myth. It became foundation for movements, for rebellions, for claims of legitimacy, for secret societies that declared themselves heirs to Templar mission. And through centuries it resurfaced in different forms, always linked to prophecy, always tied to end of days, always dangerous, always forbidden. For if true, it would mean that Christianity as institution was built upon a lie, that Christ did not end his life without heirs, that his legacy was not solely church but family, and that family still lived, still carried blood, still carried destiny. For the Templars, to guard this bloodline was to guard the hope of future, to protect until time of unveiling, to hold secret until prophecy declared it must be revealed. And thus their mission was not only military or financial, it was prophetic, apocalyptic, messianic, and this made them unbearable to church and kings, for no authority could allow guardians of a lineage that threatened to replace them. No pope could allow prophecy that foretold his fall. No king could allow bloodline that declared his throne illegitimate. And so the Templars were destroyed, betrayed, burned. Yet their mission perhaps survived, carried into shadows, preserved in secret orders, waiting still. Thus the forbidden history reveals that the Templars may have been guardians not only of relics and texts, but of blood, of lineage, of living heirs of Christ, that they carried forward a prophecy of revelation, that in end of days the hidden bloodline would emerge, that destiny would be fulfilled, that corruption would fall, that truth would rise. And this vision is the most dangerous of all, for it denies the authority of empire and church. It places power not in institutions, but in blood, in life, in secret heirs, and it calls for a transformation that would shake the world to its foundations. The prophecy and the apocalypse. The legend of the Templars would be incomplete without the prophecy that burned at its core. For wealth alone cannot explain their destruction. Power alone cannot explain the fury of kings and popes. Secrecy alone cannot explain centuries of whispers. It was prophecy, forbidden, dangerous, unveiled in fragments, preserved in shadows, feared by all, that truly defined the Templar mystery. And this prophecy spoke of apocalypse, of the end of days, of collapse and renewal, of judgment and revelation, a vision so radical that the church forbade it, erased it, buried it, and yet it survived. The Templar prophecy, as pieced together from legends, accusations, and symbols, foretold a world consumed by corruption, a church that betrayed its Christ, a papacy that sat not as shepherd, but as tyrant, a priesthood clothed in gold, while poor starved in streets, altars that served power, not truth. Sacraments sold as coins, salvation turned into business, the house of God turned into market of kings, the holy seat transformed into Babylon, the harlot of Revelation. And in this vision, the church would not endure. It would be judged. It would fall. It would be burned away in fire of heaven. The prophecy also spoke of kings, crowned in splendor, seated in palaces, yet their thrones built on lies, their crowns bought with blood, their wars endless, their greed boundless, their hearts empty. And these kings too would fall, dynasties would crumble, nations would dissolve, empires would collapse. For no throne built upon injustice can last forever. And the prophecy declared that kings and popes alike would be swept away in the storm, their power shattered, their names cursed, their empires remembered only as ruins in the dust of history. The apocalypse in the prophecy was not vague doom, but detailed vision. It spoke of wars that would engulf nations, rivers running with blood, pestilence spreading like fire, hunger devouring the poor, the earth shaking with quakes, the skies darkened by smoke, signs in stars, wonders in heavens, beasts rising, horns sounding, symbols echoing the visions of John of Patmos, yet with difference, for the Templar prophecy focused not on external enemies, but on internal corruption, not on Rome as empire of pagans, but Rome as church of popes, the betrayal not from outsiders, but from within, the Antichrist not foreign king, but false shepherd, enthroned in holy city, deceiving nations. The prophecy also held promise, for apocalypse is unveiling, not only destruction, but revelation, not only fire, but dawn, and the Templar vision spoke of truth long hidden being revealed, forbidden knowledge rising from shadows, the secrets buried beneath stone uncovered, the lineage preserved in silence unveiled, the Grail discovered, the heirs revealed, the true message of Jesus restored, the false church destroyed, the kingdom of truth established, not built on gold or crowns, but on justice and wisdom, a kingdom without pope or king, a kingdom of spirit, a kingdom of God. The prophecy may have drawn from texts the Templars discovered in Jerusalem, scrolls buried in caves, hidden beneath Temple Mount, fragments of Essenes, visions of apocalyptic sects, teachings of early Christians suppressed by Rome and perhaps combined with Gospels later banned. Thomas, Philip, Mary, Gospels of wisdom, not creed, Gospels of light, not power. And these forbidden texts may have given shape to the prophecy, confirming that the end of days would come when corruption reached its peak, when false church ruled, when kings enslaved nations, when truth was buried, and that in that moment, apocalypse would be unveiled. The church feared such prophecy because it shifted the target of judgment. In Revelation, the enemy could be seen as Rome of pagans, Babylon of outsiders. But in Templar prophecy, the enemy was Rome itself, the papacy itself, the church itself, and no pope could allow such vision to survive. No institution could permit prophecy of its own destruction. So it was forbidden, silenced, erased, yet whispered in darkness, preserved in symbol, carried in brotherhoods, hidden in architecture, encoded in rituals, living in shadows, awaiting its time. Some fragments of the prophecy suggest cycles, that history moves in patterns, that empires rise and fall in rhythm, that corruption grows until it collapses, that light hides until it returns, that 7 centuries after the fall of the Templar, the truth would rise. Again, that their fire in Paris would be rekindled, not in destruction of their order, but in unveiling of prophecy. That time itself was marked by their curse, their vision tied to ages, to numbers, to destiny. And some believe we live in that time now, that the prophecy of Templars is being fulfilled before our eyes. The apocalyptic vision also tied to the bloodline, declaring that in the end a descendant would rise, a hidden heir, carrying both royal and sacred lineage, one who would emerge in time of chaos, when kings and popes fell, when nations burned, when faith collapsed, to restore the truth, to unveil the hidden, to lead humanity into New Age. And this messianic figure was not pope, not king, not priest, but heir, descendant of the forbidden bloodline, the Grail incarnate, the vessel of prophecy. And this was the most forbidden vision of all, for it replaced church and state with person and lineage. It dethroned the entire structure of medieval power. Thus, the prophecy of the Templars was dangerous not only for its doom, but for its hope, for it declared that the end of days was not the end of humanity, but the end of lies, not the death of the world, but the death of corruption, not eternal darkness, but revelation of light. And in this vision, the Templars saw themselves as guardians, protectors of prophecy, keepers of forbidden truth, waiting for time when unveiling must come, ready to guide, ready to reveal, ready to fulfill destiny. The forbidden history shows us that prophecy is always threat to power, for it speaks truth to lies, it declares end of kings, it unveils false shepherds, it promises collapse of empires, and the Templar prophecy did exactly this, which is why it was banned, why it was erased, why it was silenced, yet it survived. In whispers, in symbols, in myths, in bloodline, in Grail legends, in secret societies, and it still speaks, calling us to see corruption, to know truth, to prepare for unveiling, to witness the apocalypse not as destruction, but as revelation. Templars and the Book of Revelation. To understand the forbidden prophecy of the Templars, we must place it beside the most famous apocalypse of all, the Book of Revelation. Written by John of Patmos in the late 1st century, a vision of beasts, trumpets, plagues, Babylon, New Jerusalem, the final battle between good and evil, the triumph of Christ, the judgment of nations. And this book, canonized by the Church, became the foundation of Christian apocalyptic thought, the lens through which the end of days was seen, the scripture that shaped imagination of centuries. Yet it was also one of the most mysterious and dangerous texts, open to endless interpretation, filled with symbols, echoes of older prophecies, layered with meanings. And here the Templars found inspiration, resonance, and perhaps divergence. The Church interpreted Revelation to point to triumph of Christ through its own authority. It declared that Babylon was pagan Rome, that beast was enemy emperor, that victory belonged to Church, that Pope was shepherd guiding flock through tribulation, that empire baptized into Christendom was the kingdom of God on earth. But the Templars, according to legend, read Revelation differently. For their prophecy did not point outward to pagans or Muslims or outsiders. It pointed inward, to corruption within Church itself, to betrayal by Pope himself, to fall of Rome not as pagan empire, but as papal throne. And in this shift lay the forbidden heart of their vision. The book of Revelation describes Babylon the Great, the harlot clothed in scarlet and purple, adorned with gold and jewels, drunk with blood of saints, seated upon beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, and the Church proclaimed this image as pagan empire. But the Templar prophecy, according to whispers, saw Babylon as Rome itself in medieval age, the papacy clothed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, drunk with power, persecuting true disciples, seated on throne of lies. And thus Revelation became mirror, showing corruption of Church, warning of its fall. And this interpretation was intolerable, forbidden. Erased Revelation also speaks of the beast, rising from sea, given authority over nations, blaspheming against heaven, waging war against saints, demanding worship, and Church taught this beast was pagan power, enemy of old, yet Templar vision may have seen beast as papal system itself, rising from waters of baptism, yet corrupt, demanding obedience, persecuting true believers, adorning itself with authority. And if beast was Pope, then Church was Antichrist, then prophecy was weapon against Rome, and this interpretation was too dangerous to be allowed. John of Patmos saw visions of seals broken, trumpets sounding, bowls of wrath poured, plagues, earthquakes, stars falling, and in Templar prophecy, these were not merely cosmic signs, but symbols of history. Wars between nations, corruption of kings, famine caused by greed, pestilence spread through oppression, all seen as signs of age, not far off but present, unfolding, to culminate in collapse of church and crowns. And in this way, Revelation became not distant vision, but imminent unveiling. Prophecy not of ancient Rome, but of medieval Christendom itself. The New Jerusalem, shining city descending from heaven, pure and holy, without temple, for God himself dwells there, was for church image of itself, papal Rome as kingdom of heaven. But for Templars it was symbol of New Age, beyond pope, beyond king, beyond corrupted. Church, a kingdom, not of institution, but of spirit, not of throne, but of truth, not of empire, but of justice. And this was their hope, that after fall of false Babylon, after destruction of corrupt church, after collapse of kings, the true kingdom would arise, the kingdom of God unveiled, and the Templars saw themselves as guardians preparing way for that kingdom. The parallels between Revelation and Templar prophecy are clear, yet the differences are sharper, for while both speak of beasts, Babylon, judgment, New Jerusalem, the church interpretation preserved its own power, while the Templar vision condemned it. The church turned Revelation into tool of empire. The Templars turned it into warning against empire. The church used it to sanctify itself. The Templars used it to unveil its corruption, and thus the same text became battlefield, interpretation became weapon, prophecy became forbidden. It is possible the Templars also had access to alternative apocalyptic texts, Jewish apocalypses like Book of Enoch, 4, Ezra 2, 3 Oi is 2 Baruch, texts found centuries later at Qumran, filled with visions of angels and watchers, of cosmic battles, of judgment upon corrupt priests, of temple destroyed and rebuilt. And these may have shaped their vision, for if they uncovered scrolls beneath Temple Mount, as legend says, then they would have seen that Revelation was not isolated, but part of larger apocalyptic tradition, and they may have recognized that the church had chosen one version while suppressing others, and in this recognition, they formed their own forbidden prophecy. The church feared alternative apocalypses because they broke monopoly of interpretation. If Revelation could be read against Rome, then Pope's authority fell. If other apocalypses spoke of corrupt priests, then church itself was judged. If scrolls from Jerusalem condemned false shepherds, then prophecy turned inward, and thus the Templar vision was threat not only of knowledge, but of perspective, of seeing Revelation with new eyes, of reading it against power, of turning Scripture into judgment upon throne of Peter. The accusations at Templar trial echo this. Charges of denying Christ, spitting on cross, worshipping idol, may in twisted form reflect hidden teaching, that cross had been corrupted by church, that Christ had been betrayed by Pope, that true faith was hidden, that idol accused was symbol of wisdom, of prophecy, of knowledge forbidden, and though inquisitors twisted into heresy, beneath slander may lie truth, that the Templars read Revelation differently, that they saw in its visions not validation of church, but condemnation of it, and for this they were silenced. The forbidden history of Templars and Revelation shows us that prophecy is never neutral. It is always interpreted, always wielded, always contested. And in their hands Revelation became not comfort to empire, but warning of its doom, not sanctification of papacy, but unveiling of its corruption, not triumph of church, but fall of church, not authority of kings, but destruction of kings. And this interpretation was forbidden, erased, destroyed with fire and rope, yet it survived in legend, in symbol, in whisper, in prophecy. Thus the Templars stand as interpreters of revelation, readers of apocalypse, guardians of forbidden vision, their prophecy parallel yet opposed to church, their vision echoing John yet condemning Rome, their hope not in pope but in truth, their expectation not of empire sanctified but of empire destroyed, their mission to guard until time of unveiling, until end of days, until New Jerusalem descended, not built of stone but of spirit, not enthroned in Rome but in hearts of faithful, not corrupted by power but pure as light, suppression by church and empire. The history of the church is not only story of faith and salvation, it is also story of control, of defining orthodoxy, of deciding what may be believed, what may be read, what may be spoken, and of silencing all that contradicts its power. From the earliest centuries, Rome took upon itself the role of gatekeeper of prophecy, declaring which texts were holy and which were heresy, which visions were divine and which were false. And in this great suppression, the Knights Templar became both guardians of forbidden knowledge and victims of its destruction, for prophecy that condemned the church could never be tolerated. The process began long before the Templars, when councils decided the canon, when Gospels like Thomas, Philip, Mary, Judas were declared heretical, when apocalypses beyond John were forbidden, when teachings of Gnostic communities were burned, their books destroyed, their teachers silenced, their churches erased, and what survived was only what Rome permitted, a carefully chosen scripture, a carefully shaped doctrine, a vision of faith that placed Pope at center, church as only path, and all alternatives condemned as dangerous, demonic, forbidden. The book of Revelation itself nearly did not survive. Many bishops doubted it, many resisted its inclusion, but in the end it was canonized, yet only on condition that its interpretation be controlled, that its symbols be tamed, that its visions be directed against pagans, not popes, outsiders, not insiders, Rome as empire, not Rome as church, and so the most radical of texts became instrument of orthodoxy, turned from sword against power into shield for it, and those who dared read it otherwise were condemned, their interpretations burned, their names erased, their voices lost. Into this world the Templars entered, discovering perhaps scrolls hidden, prophecies suppressed, bloodline traditions denied, visions of apocalypse forbidden, and they preserved them, guarded them, whispered them, perhaps encoded them in ritual and symbol, and this made them dangerous, for knowledge outside control of Rome could not be allowed, prophecy not sanctioned could not be tolerated. And so when Philip the Fair sought their destruction, the church cooperated. The machinery of suppression was ready. The Templars were branded heretics. Their knowledge declared blasphemy, their order erased, their prophecy forbidden. The methods of suppression were brutal, inquisitions established to hunt heresy, trials staged to condemn, torture used to extract confessions, libraries raided, scrolls burned, voices silenced, whole communities destroyed. The Cathars in Languedoc exterminated for their dualist vision, their gospels lost, their prophecy silenced, yet perhaps linked to Templar guardianship, for both movements shared suspicion of Rome, both carried apocalyptic visions, both were condemned as heretics, and in the fires of Montségur, as in the fires of Paris, prophecy was silenced by sword and flame. The church and empire worked together, for kings feared prophecy as much as popes. Prophecy undermined crowns as much as altars. Prophecy declared judgment upon injustice, upon greed, upon corruption, and no king could allow that voice to rise. No emperor could tolerate that vision. So kings and popes allied in suppression, silencing prophets, burning books, erasing memories, rewriting history, and presenting their version as the only truth, their vision as the only faith, their prophecy as the only apocalypse. And in this alliance the Templars were destroyed, because their prophecy threatened both throne and altar. Yet suppression never fully succeeds, for fragments survive, whispers endure, legends grow, symbols remain, carved in stone, hidden in ritual, encoded in myth, and the very act of suppression creates mystery, for what is forbidden becomes powerful, what is erased becomes desired, what is silenced becomes remembered in whispers, and so the destruction of the Histories. Templars did not erase their prophecy, it magnified it, turning them into martyrs of forbidden truth, transforming their order into legend, their prophecy into myth, their vision into enduring shadow that haunted church and empire. The forbidden prophecy declared that corruption would fall, that church would be judged, that kings would be destroyed, that truth would be unveiled, and this could not be tolerated. So it was banned, erased, silenced, yet in being silenced it became immortal, passed in secrecy, carried in shadows, preserved by those who resisted suppression, those who built secret societies, those who carved symbols in hidden chapels, those who encoded truths in architecture and myth, and so prophecy survived even in age of its suppression. We see traces in Freemasonry, in Rosicrucians, in Grail romances, in legends of bloodline, in whispers of hidden scrolls, in myths of vanished fleets, all fragments of what was forbidden, all hints of survival, all reminders that suppression never ends the truth, it only drives it deeper, into shadows, into secrecy, into symbols, where it waits until the appointed hour, until the time of unveiling, until the end of days, when what was forbidden will be revealed, when what was silenced will be spoken, when what was burned will rise from ashes. Thus Part 10 reveals the Great Suppression, the systematic destruction of alternative prophecy by church and empire, the erasure of voices, the burning of books, the silencing of heretics, the destruction of the Templars, and yet also the survival of prophecy in whispers, in symbols, in myths, in secret brotherhoods, waiting for time of unveiling, waiting for the end of days, waiting for the forbidden truth to rise again. Echoes in secret societies. When the fires of Paris consumed Jacques de Molay and the decrees of Clement V dissolved the Templars, it seemed to the world that their order was ended forever, their wealth seized, their power broken, their prophecy silenced. Yet history shows us that shadows live longer than flames, and from the ashes of the Templars rose whispers, legends, secret brotherhoods, societies that claimed to carry their legacy, to guard their knowledge, to preserve their forbidden prophecy, and across centuries these echoes multiplied, weaving into Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, occult traditions, and even the conspiracy theories of modern times. The most persistent link is to the Freemasons, a brotherhood whose origins remain clouded in mystery. Some say they rose from medieval stonemasons' guilds, others from ancient initiatory schools, but in their symbols and rituals we see unmistakable parallels to the Templars, the temple itself as central symbol, oaths of secrecy, initiation ceremonies, emphasis on hidden wisdom, and above all the belief that truth is preserved in architecture, in stone, in symbol, just as the Templars once encoded their knowledge in chapels and fortresses, and in later centuries Masonic lodges openly embraced the Templar heritage, creating degrees of knighthood that honored them, declaring continuity, even if only symbolic, between the two. Within Freemasonry, the theme of forbidden prophecy persists, expressed in allegories of building, the Temple of Solomon, of seeking light, of unveiling hidden truth, of resisting corruption, allegories that echo the Templar vision that the church was Babylon, that kings would fall, that New Jerusalem would descend not as papal empire, but as revelation of truth. And though Masonry in modern form does not openly proclaim apocalypse, its imagery of judgment, light, and unveiling reflects the deeper current of Templar prophecy carried in secrecy through centuries. The Rosicrucians too echoed this legacy, emerging in 17th century with manifestos that declared possession of secret wisdom, forbidden knowledge, revelations of cosmic truth, visions of transformation at the end of age. And while they cloaked themselves in alchemical and mystical language, beneath it lay the same pattern: prophecy of corruption, prophecy of unveiling, prophecy of renewal. And many believed the Rosicrucians were heirs of Templar knowledge, their manifestos a continuation of forbidden prophecy, reshaped for a new age, still condemned by church, still suppressed, yet still alive. Occult traditions of Europe also preserved echoes, alchemy not merely chemical, but spiritual, transmutation not only of metals, but of humanity, end of age as great transformation, apocalypse as unveiling, and in secret texts of Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and esotericism, we see fragments of Templar legacy, symbols of temple, visions of end, prophecies of hidden king, myths of bloodline, and those scholars dismiss as coincidence. The persistence of these motifs across centuries suggests transmission, survival, hidden currents carrying prophecy forward beneath surface of history. The Enlightenment and revolutions of modern age also drew upon these echoes, for secret societies often stood behind them, carrying ideals of liberty, justice, equality, but also carrying undercurrent of prophecy, belief that corrupt thrones must fall, that empires must collapse, that new order must arise, and though political, these visions echo the forbidden prophecy of Templars. For their destruction foretold fall of kings, their prophecy declared end of church, their hope promised dawn beyond empire, and revolutions fulfilled in part what they had once whispered, though not yet the final unveiling. In modern times, conspiracy theories too have taken up the Templar legacy, claiming secret orders rule behind scenes, that bloodlines of Christ still exist, that prophecy is still guarded, that apocalypse is near, and while much is fantasy, the persistence of themes shows the power of the Templar myth, the enduring belief that hidden societies carry forbidden knowledge, that prophecy of end is preserved, that unveiling is yet to come. And this belief itself is part of prophecy, for it keeps alive the expectation, the memory, the forbidden truth. The echo of Templar prophecy in secret societies is not only in symbols and myths, it is in structure, the secrecy, the oaths, the hierarchy, the rituals of death and rebirth, of light and darkness, of fall and renewal. All reflect the apocalyptic vision, all mirror the prophecy of end of days, for secret societies exist not merely for fellowship, but for preservation of knowledge. And the Templar knowledge was prophecy, forbidden, banned, condemned, yet never erased, always carried in hidden brotherhoods, always awaiting its time. Rosslyn Chapel remains symbol of this survival, its carvings filled with symbols that later appear in masonry, its architecture echoing Templar forms, its mysteries unsolved, and it stands as stone witness that prophecy survived, encoded not in book that could be burned, but in stone that endures, and in every symbol carved, we see echo of forbidden prophecy. Reminder that the Templars live on in shadows, that their mission was not ended, that their prophecy was preserved. The forbidden history of echoes in secret societies shows us that the destruction of the Templars was not an end, but a transformation. Their knowledge passed into new forms, their prophecy whispered in new rituals, their legacy reshaped yet alive, and across centuries their voice has not been silenced, it has been carried in secrecy, in symbols, in myths, in conspiracies, waiting for moment of unveiling, waiting for end of days, waiting for prophecy to be fulfilled. Thus Part 11 reveals that the Templar prophecy did not die in flames of Paris. It lived on in secret societies, in Freemasonry, in Rosicrucians, in occult traditions, in conspiracy theories, in hidden architecture, in whispered rituals, and through these echoes it has shaped history, haunted church, challenged kings, inspired revolutions, and continues to this day to remind us that forbidden prophecy endures, that truth cannot be erased, that the end of days is still coming, the age of unveiling. The prophecy of the Templars was not written in a single book, not preserved in one parchment, not inscribed upon one stone. It was carried in fragments, whispered in rituals, encoded in architecture, preserved in legends, and passed in secrecy through centuries. It was forbidden, condemned, silenced, yet never destroyed. And as history has unfolded, the prophecy seems less like myth and more like warning. For the corruption it foretold has grown, the collapse it envisioned has come nearer, the unveiling it promised has begun, and many believe that we live now in the age of unveiling, the very end of days that the Templars guarded. The prophecy declared that the Church would betray Christ, and today the scandals of power, the abuse, the corruption, the wealth accumulated in Rome while faithful suffer, all reveal the truth of that vision. The institution that claimed to be shepherd has become empire. The throne that claimed to be holy has been stained by greed, the altars corrupted by politics, and the Templar prophecy of Babylon within the Church appears fulfilled before our eyes. The prophecy declared that kings and rulers would fall, that crowns built upon blood would not endure, and history has shown the collapse of dynasties, revolutions overthrowing monarchies, thrones shattered, empires dissolved. Yet still the prophecy stretches further, for rulers of today still sit in power. Nations still built upon lies still stand, yet cracks widen. Corruption spreads, wars rage, greed consumes, and the prophecy whispers that their end too is near, that crowns of this age will fall as surely as crowns of past, that no empire escapes judgment forever. The prophecy declared that truth would be unveiled, that what was hidden would be revealed, and in our age of discovery, of archives opened, of scrolls unearthed, of gospels long lost rediscovered, of knowledge once forbidden now accessible, we see this unveiling, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi texts, all forbidden once, now read by all, and they confirm that early Christianity was not one but many, that voices were silenced, that knowledge was erased, that prophecy was suppressed, and their return fulfills the Templar vision that truth buried would rise again in time of unveiling. The prophecy also declared that hidden bloodline would resurface, that heirs would emerge, and while historians dismiss, legends persist, genealogies traced, claims made, families whispered to carry sacred lineage, and whether true in flesh or true in symbol, the meaning remains, that authority of church and crown is false, that legitimacy lies elsewhere, that truth of Jesus was family, community, spirit beyond institution, and in age of collapse this message grows stronger, that the heirs of Christ are not popes or kings, but the people who carry his spirit, the seekers of truth, the guardians of prophecy, the ones who live the unveiling. The apocalypse of the Templars was not only destruction, it was transformation. It was fire that burned corruption, but revealed light. It was collapse of empire, but dawn of justice. It was end of church as institution, but rebirth of faith as truth. It was end of kings as rulers, but rise of humanity as free. It was unveiling, revelation, the lifting of veil, the exposure of lies, the shining of truth. And in this vision, the end of days is not despair, but hope, not doom, but renewal, not darkness, but dawn. And this is why it was forbidden, because it promised liberation, because it promised freedom, because it declared the end of empire. We live in an age when secrecy dissolves, when forbidden truths come to light, when hidden archives open, when conspiracies are uncovered, when corruption is revealed, when technology pierces shadows, when whispers spread across world in a moment. And this too is unveiling. The prophecy fulfilled not in flames of heaven, but in flood of truth, not in collapse of sky, but in collapse of lies, not in judgment of angels, but in judgment of people armed with knowledge. And the Templar prophecy seems to live again, its forbidden vision unfolding in reality of our world. The Templars themselves became symbol of endurance, guardians of prophecy, martyrs of forbidden truth, and though their order was destroyed, their mission continues in those who seek truth beyond institution, who question authority, who resist corruption, who live with eyes open to unveiling. And this is the true survival of the prophecy, not in one lineage or one society, but in the spirit that cannot be silenced, the spirit of unveiling, the spirit of apocalypse as revelation, the spirit of end as beginning. The forbidden history teaches us that what is suppressed returns, what is erased resurfaces, what is silenced is spoken again, and the Templar prophecy is proof. For though burned in Paris, it lives in us, in our questions, in our search for truth, in our recognition of corruption, in our hope for renewal, in our belief that end is not final, but doorway, unveiling, transformation. And this is the age of unveiling, when all lies collapse, when all secrets are exposed, when all power is judged, when truth long hidden is revealed, when prophecy is fulfilled. The legacy of the Templars is thus not only in ruins of castles or symbols in stone, not only in Freemasonry or conspiracy, not only in legends of bloodline or grail, it is in prophecy itself, in forbidden vision of unveiling, in declaration that corruption will fall, that truth will rise, that New Jerusalem will come, not as empire of pope, not as throne of king, but as dawn of justice, as kingdom of truth, as light unveiled. And this legacy is alive now, in our time, in our unveiling, in our end of days. Thus the final chapter closes, yet the prophecy remains open, for end of days is not past but present, not written but unfolding, not sealed but unveiled. And the Templars still speak, through fire, through stone, through symbol, through whisper, through us, calling us to see corruption, to embrace truth, to prepare for unveiling, to live as guardians of forbidden prophecy, to walk through end into dawn, to witness the final unveiling, the revelation of all things, the end of lies, the beginning of truth, the true apocalypse of the Templars.